The story begins on a quiet evening, the kind of evening where most people walk with calm footsteps, holding warm food in their hands or chatting with friends. But among all these people, there was one small girl walking slowly, almost dragging her feet. She looked tired, hungry, and lost in her thoughts. Her clothes were not fancy, just simple and a little worn out, as if she had been wearing them for days. Her hair was tied loosely and her hands were slightly trembling, not because of fear, but because she hadn't eaten properly for a long time. She wasn't dangerous or scary. She was just a hungry child who had been looking for a way to fill her empty stomach for the day. The world around her was full of noise, people laughing, music playing from small shops, plates clinking inside restaurants, but her world was silent. Every step she took felt heavier than the last. She didn't want money. She wasn't asking for luxury. She only needed a little food, something that could give her enough strength to keep going. After walking for almost an hour, she reached a lively cafe. The place was warm, filled with the smell of freshly baked bread and hot soup. Through the glass window, she could see people enjoying their meals. And for a moment, she stood outside just watching them. She wasn't jealous. She simply wished she could have a little of what they had, but there was something else that caught her attention even more than the food. Inside the cafe, in the corner near the window, stood a beautiful piano. It was old but shiny, polished with care. She stopped breathing for a second when she saw it. Her eyes were fixed on the piano, almost like she was looking at something from her past. She had seen many pianos before, but this one felt different. It felt like a chance, a small door opening for her when all other doors had stayed closed. She slowly pushed the door open. The warm air hit her face, and the sound of people talking filled her ears. Nobody noticed her at first. She quietly walked inside and stood near the piano, keeping her hands behind her back. She looked like she wanted to speak, but wasn't sure if she had the right to. A waiter walked past her, not paying attention. The people kept laughing, enjoying their evening. Finally, she gathered a little courage and stepped toward the counter. The owner of the cafe, a middle-aged man with a friendly but busy face, looked at her with a puzzled expression. Before he could say anything, she softly whispered, "Excuse me, can I play the piano? For a little food?" For a moment, nobody reacted. The owner tilted his head slightly, unsure if he heard her correctly. She repeated her words again, her voice even softer this time. But before the owner could respond, a group of young customers nearby, who had been watching her curiously, burst into laughter. One of them joked that she must be pretending or trying to get attention. Another person teased that anyone could say they could play the piano, if it meant getting free food. Their laughter spread quickly around the cafe, and suddenly many people were looking at her with amusement, not kindness. Some smiled in a mocking way. Others raised their eyebrows as if they were waiting for her to embarrass herself. Even though nobody was trying to physically harm her, the laughter felt sharp. It made her heart sink a little. She lowered her eyes, staring at the floor, wishing she could disappear for a moment, but she stayed still. She did not run away. She took a slow breath, her fingers slightly moving as if they were trying to remember a melody. She didn't argue or try to convince anyone. She knew she wasn't lying. She knew what she could do. And she knew she wasn't asking for something impossible. She just wanted a small meal. The cafe owner waved his hand, trying to calm the crowd, but even he seemed unsure. He didn't know if she was just another child pretending to be talented or if she actually had some skill. "You want to play? Are you sure?" he asked her gently. She nodded without raising her head. "All right," he said, more out of curiosity than belief. "Go ahead. Let's see what you can do." As soon as those words came out of his mouth, a wave of whispering passed through the room. People leaned forward in their seats, some smiling because they expected something funny to happen. A few rolled their eyes, already assuming she had no talent and was just like any other hungry child looking for a trick. She turned toward the piano. Her steps were small but steady. She didn't look nervous now. She looked focused. She gently placed her hand on the piano surface, feeling the cold wood under her fingers. It reminded her of another piano she used to play long ago, back when life was normal, back when things weren't so hard. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting those memories give her strength. But before she could even sit, one man called out, "Hey, little girl, don't break it!" His friends burst into laughter again. She paused. Not because she was scared, but because the comment stung. She had never broken anything, but she didn't respond. She simply breathed in and sat on the piano bench. The crowd looked ready to laugh again. Some people took out their phones, not to record a soulful moment, but to record something they thought would be funny. The girl didn't notice, or maybe didn't care. Her eyes were locked on the keys as if they were speaking to her. She slowly placed her fingers on them. Even that small action made some people snicker. No one in the room believed her. No one thought a tired, hungry child could do anything impressive. They just assumed she was pretending, or that she would hit a few random keys and then leave. The whole place was waiting for her to fail, but she didn't start playing yet. She sat there silently for a full minute. People got impatient. Someone muttered that she was wasting everyone's time. Someone else joked that she was probably trying to remember how to play the birthday song. Still, she didn't move. She took that minute to breathe, to calm her heart, to gather her broken pieces and turn them into strength. And during that 1 minute, something interesting happened. A few people in the room, including a little boy sitting with his parents, stopped laughing. They noticed the seriousness in her eyes. They noticed the way her fingers rested on the keys, not like someone pretending, but like someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Their laughter faded a little, but for most of the room, the mockery continued. Soft, giggling voices filled the air. The girl felt the weight of every sound. Her stomach growled quietly, reminding her why she was even doing this. She didn't want to impress anyone. She didn't want applause. She only wanted a small plate of food so she could sleep without hunger tearing at her dot. After that silent minute, she slightly lifted her head. She didn't smile. She didn't look angry. She just looked ready. Her fingers gently pressed one single key, just one. The sound was soft and pure. A few people still giggled. She pressed another key, then another, slowly shaping a quiet melody. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was simple, gentle, and full of emotion. It was the kind of beginning that didn't shout, "Look at me," but whispered, "Listen." The crowd didn't fall silent yet, but a few people paused mid-laugh. Something about the way she touched the keys felt different. Real, natural, not fake. Not forced, she continued, adding more notes, letting the tune grow softly. She wasn't trying to show off. She was simply letting the music speak for her. Speak for her hunger, her long walks, her quiet tears, her strength, and all the nights she had spent wishing for a better life. But the room still wasn't fully convinced. Not yet, and this is where part one ends, right at that moment when everyone is still expecting her to fail, still convinced she's just a hungry child trying her luck. They don't know that the next few seconds will change everything. They don't know that this quiet girl, sitting in the corner of a busy cafe, is about to give them a moment they will never forget. They have no idea that her music, once it truly begins, will turn their laughter into silence because they don't know yet who she really is, and they definitely don't know what she can do when her fingers finally begin to play for real. The first few notes she played were soft, almost like a whisper in the middle of a noisy street. People were still talking, still laughing a little, still watching her with disbelief. They thought she would stop after a moment. They thought she had no real skills. But she didn't look up at them. She didn't get distracted. Her fingers stayed on the keys, gently shaping a melody that slowly began to grow warmer, deeper, and more alive. She pressed another note, then another, and soon the soft melody turned into something fuller. It had emotion in it, something the people in the room didn't expect. Slowly, the sound filled the cafe, not loudly, but with a calm strength that made people pause for a moment. It was like a small breeze entering a room full of noise, and that's when the first person fell silent. It was a woman sitting near the window. Her smile faded as she tilted her head, listening more carefully. She didn't laugh this time. She didn't even blink. She just listened. Something in the music touched her heart before she even realized. What was happening? The little boy who had been watching her earlier tugged on his mother's sleeve. "Mama, she can really play," he whispered. His mother didn't answer. She was too busy listening as well, but the group who had laughed earlier still didn't seem convinced. One of them muttered, "Okay, she can play a little. Big deal." But even he didn't sound as confident as before. His voice had lost that mocking tone. The melody was slowly sinking into the room. The girl continued playing. Her hands moved faster now, not in a showy way, but in a natural flow. The melody began to form shapes, memories, and emotions that didn't need words. Her music was warm like sunlight, soft like a gentle promise, and strong like a dream refusing to die. Every note she played came from a place deep inside her childhood. Her struggles, her hunger, her hopes, everything she had carried alone until that moment. And for the first time in the entire evening, the room actually listened. A soft hush spread around the cafe. The laughter faded completely. The clinking of plates slowed. Even the waiter, who had been rushing from table to table, stopped to listen. He stood near the counter, eyebrows raised, surprised by what he was hearing. The girl didn't look at anyone. Her eyes were closed now. She wasn't playing for the crowd. She wasn't trying to prove her worth. She wasn't trying to show them they had been wrong. She was simply letting the piano speak for her the way she never could with words, and the piano listened to her too. It responded to every touch of her fingertips, filling the room with a beautiful, emotional sound. Her melody no longer felt like a whisper. It felt like a story, her story, moving through the air like magic. People started leaning forward in their seats. The group that had mocked her earlier slowly stopped smiling. One of them swallowed hard, his face turning serious. They finally understood this wasn't just a hungry child pretending to play. This was someone with a rare gift, someone whose talent had been shaped by pain and perseverance. The cafe owner, who had been leaning against the counter with his arms crossed, felt his heart soften. At first he had allowed her to play out of curiosity. Now he stood still, deeply moved, unable to take his eyes off her. He realized that he had almost turned her away. He almost missed something extraordinary. As the melody became more emotional, the room became more silent. It was the kind of silence that wasn't empty. It was filled with awe, filled with respect, filled with realization. People who had laughed now felt a little guilty. They didn't mean to hurt her, but their reactions had come without thinking. And now her music was showing them a truth they couldn't ignore. The girl lifted her fingers higher, letting the melody rise gently, almost like a voice calling out from a distant place. Then she softened the tune again, letting it fall to a peaceful, calming rhythm. The contrast between the rising and falling notes created something magical in the room. People felt goosebumps. Some felt emotional without understanding why. One woman near the middle wiped away a small tear forming in her eye. She didn't know this girl. She didn't know her struggles. But something in the music touched a quiet part of her heart, something she hadn't felt for a long time. The girl continued playing with complete focus. She forgot her hunger. She forgot the laughter. She forgot the noise around her. In that moment, the piano wasn't just an instrument. It was her voice, her story, her escape, her strength. The melody became slightly faster, more passionate, filled with a powerful energy that slowly lifted the entire room. It felt as if the air itself was moving with the music. The cafe, which had been noisy and loud just minutes ago, now felt like a peaceful hall where every soul was listening to one little girl who had walked in with nothing but hope. Then something incredible happened. As she reached the middle of the piece, her fingers moved with a sudden confidence that looked almost magical. She played a sequence of notes so fast, so clean, and so graceful that the room gasped. It wasn't a gasp of shock, it was a gasp of admiration. Even the group who had mocked her earlier leaned forward in awe. One of them whispered, "How is she doing that?" Another shook his head slowly, speechless. The cafe owner placed his hand over his mouth, amazed by the purity of the sound. He had owned that piano for years, but he had never heard it sound so beautiful. He wondered where this girl had learned to play like this. He wondered why the world had been so unfair to someone so gifted, but the girl didn't think about any of that. She just continued playing, letting her heart guide her fingers. The melody reached a high note, holding it just long enough to make the audience hold their breath. Then she slowly brought the notes down, like a soft rain falling after a long storm. The quiet beauty of her music kept spreading through the cafe. Nobody moved. Nobody whispered. Nobody even sipped their drinks. They all just watched and listened, completely lost in the moment she had created for them. Then the melody began to slow, as if the story was reaching its final page. Her hands softened, her touch became lighter. She was bringing the piece to a close, not in a dramatic way, but in a gentle, heartfelt ending that felt like a warm hug after a long, difficult day. When she pressed the final key, the sound lingered in the air for a long second. Then everything went silent, completely silent. The cafe was frozen. The girl slowly lifted her hands off the keys, breathing softly. She didn't know what to expect. She didn't know if they would laugh again, or clap, or ignore her. She finally looked up. And what she saw shocked her. Every single person in the cafe was staring at her with wide, amazed eyes. No one moved. No one blinked. They were still trying to process what had just happened. They had expected a child to hit random keys for food. They had expected something silly or messy. They never expected this. Then, after a long moment, someone began clapping. Just one person. Then another joined. Then another. Within seconds, the entire room was filled with warm, loud applause. People stood up. Some even wiped tears. Others placed their hands over their hearts, overwhelmed by the beauty they had just witnessed. The girl's eyes widened. She had never heard applause like this before. She didn't know what to do. She simply sat there, stunned, trying to understand what was happening. The cafe owner hurried toward her, not with judgment, but with genuine kindness. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder and said, "You'll eat as much as you want today." His voice wasn't loud or dramatic, just honest and full of respect. People began approaching her with soft smiles. Some offered to buy her meals. Others asked if she had a place to stay. A few even asked if she had ever considered joining a music school. The girl felt overwhelmed, but in a good way. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen, not as a burden, not as a child walking around hungry, but as someone with a gift. She didn't ask for fame. She didn't ask for money. She only asked for a little food. And in return, she had given the cafe something priceless, a moment of beauty they would never forget. As she took her first bite of warm food, the taste almost brought tears to her eyes. Not because the food was anything special, but because it was given with kindness. Real kindness. Her music had changed the room. Her courage had changed their hearts. And in that moment, she realized something she would carry for the rest of her life. Sometimes, the world laughs before it understands you. Sometimes people judge before they know your truth. But the right moment can turn everything around. And that evening, with nothing but her tired hands and a single piano, she proved that even the quietest soul can silence a room with nothing but a beautiful gift.